what is the existing culture as it relates to disabilities in Barbados?
I'm a parent of a child with autism who's now 24 years old. I would say that I have seen the way we have advanced as a society with regard to disabilities. I know that within schools and so on, it is popular, say, for teachers to say that nothing is being done. It's popular for parents to say that nothing is being done, and so on. And there was a stage in my life when my son was very young that I would have said nothing was being done. But I can actually begin by saying that over the years, I've seen quite a bit of advancement as far as Barbados is concerned with regard to disability.
And as I fill this space, I just want to share with you the definition of disabilities that we found, that we researched. No, we are not going to come up with it on our own. You're disabled under the Equality Act 2010 if you have a physical or mental impairment that has a substantial and long-term negative effect on your ability to do normal daily activities. This was taken from the Act of 2010 in the UK.
I hear what you're saying, and I agree with you that persons need to be made more aware of the challenges, because I wouldn't say disability doesn't have challenges, it does. All of us that live with disabilities, whether it is as a person that actually has one, an educator, a parent of a child with a disability, the sibling of a person with a disability, we all live with the challenges and the difficulties of that disability. But I am more than my disability. Kwame is far more than his disability. Miss Lashley is more than her son's or her daughter's disability. Miss St. Hill is also more than her children's disabilities. What we are all people. And sometimes I don't think society recognizes enough that we are a part of the society too. I don't need to talk about what it is living with blindness all the time. Why? Because people assume that's all I'm going to talk about. So they start to tune out. There are radio programs, they're twice weekly now, and have been for years, about, and they're always interviewing people with disabilities. There are newspaper articles, on average, once a month, but it's far more often than that, written by persons with disabilities, about persons with disabilities. Up to yesterday, Oscar Pistorius was in a newspaper again about, so it's not that people aren't hearing enough about it. I think part of the problem is they're still seeing us as a them, as a those. What people need to recognize is, I am a woman with a disability. I have the same gynecological challenges as any other woman. I have the same hair crisis. You know, it's we black women here. I had to get up 5 o'clock Wednesday morning to wash this mass on my head. You know, it had nothing to do with being blind. It had to do with the fact that I got quite a bit of hair behind here to deal with. You know what I'm talking about? So when we talking about our hair, all of us, we can sit down here and talk about various types of hair drama we've had. And eventually, you will stop thinking about me as a blind woman and realize I'm a woman just like you, living with the same challenges that you live with. When you start to recognize me that way, when you start to realize that Kwame is a 16, 17-year-old young man who has the same needs, interests, and desires as any other young man, and you stop focusing on how Kwame is coping with his blindness, focus on how Kwame is coping with being a young man. His blindness is secondary to that, or at least it should be in some respects. It is not that it doesn't make a difference to how you live, it does. But when people start recognizing those things, that would also go a far way in helping people to realize. Let me explain what I mean. When you realize that the woman coming to this PTA meeting today, Mr. Gibbs, is in a wheelchair. The mother of one of the students is in a wheelchair. You're not going to have your meeting upstairs because you're going to recognize Miss So-and-so is coming to the meeting and she is going to be included. If Miss So-and-so never comes out to the meeting, then why are you going to move it downstairs? If Miss So-and-so never writes and says, look, I tried to go to the meeting last time, because I want to know what's going on in class 3 with my children. I don't see them getting enough homework. I don't see this. I don't hear this. I don't that. Then the disability becomes secondary because the challenge is her as a parent. You understand what I'm coming from? So it's not just about hearing, because people get tired about hearing it. And you know what? People form their own conclusions. They don't know how they would cope with being blind. So no matter how many times, I had a conversation with a woman once. She's standing in front of me, sofa, and she'd accompanied a blind man to my office. She said she wants to buy him a washing machine. The guy says, but I like washing clothes by hand. I feel you need a washing machine. He says, but I don't have anything to do many days come. I like to wash my clothes. But it ain't right for a blind man to have to wash his clothes by hand. And then she tells my colleague, she says, I admire her so much. I said, thank you. I think she's dressed so good. I said, thank you. I would like to tell her how lovely she looked the other day. You get right, no matter what I said, no matter what that man said, she wasn't listening. And we encounter that on a day-to-day basis. Now, I could go on for the next 50 minutes, but I'm not the only person here to talk, so I'll shut up for now.
I mean, wanted to share with us in terms of at your school, in terms of inclusion.
I would say when I first got there, I felt, I still feel included, but when I first got there, it was so different because at lunchtime, children would, take me around and say, well, we're passing the cafeteria, we're passing here, we're doing this, we're doing that. If someone falls on, they'll say, well, Kwame, so this fell down. We'll laugh together and stuff. But now I would say they got, I wouldn't say lose interest, but I'm like any other person now. So things they did, even when I was walking around at school with my kin. At first, when I'm walking around, they would step aside and allow me to pass. If somebody was in the way, they would literally push them out the way just for me to pass. But now, they don't really do that anymore. They'll trip over my cane. Yes, it's funny. And they would bump into me and stuff like that. So I would say that I wonder if it's because they lose interest or because probably see me as normal.
So for you, which is better? I just wanted to know. For you,
Well,
which
the first way, yes, I want them to, see that I'm normal like anybody else, but how it was at first was, I would say, a more enjoyable experience because I felt like a part of the group. But now it's just, I won't say I'm alone, but it's just me. So how it was before, at first when I went there, I would prefer.
I wanted to look at, when we talked about culture, one of the working definitions is how we do things around here. I'm Gloria. I'm one of those on the course. And one of the things that we've recognized is that in our culture, we've come across attitudinal barriers. And there are a list of barriers, and I think one of those barriers as well is stereotyping. I'm just getting used to understanding more about persons with disabilities. So I would say ignorance is also one of those areas, one of those barriers that we have come up against. Now, I teach at a school where we have students coming in with various disabilities, and the children, they are very accommodating. The children don't see disabilities. They see another child like myself. But I think the adults, we are the ones who tend to be the ones who would make comments and try to make the children seem to be different. So one of the things that we need to work on as a society within our culture will be to work on our attitudes towards children with disabilities or persons with disabilities.
Yes, I wanted to say, and I was going to look at it from the classroom to the boardroom, because we must recognize that children with special needs are indeed special. And I want to first say that I work in a company, and one of our best customer service reps was someone with a disability. And the company's Facebook was at its best when the administrator was a person with a disability. And they're special, and they have unique qualities that if given a chance, they would excel. From a parent perspective, I just want to say, and in terms of early childhood education, children with special needs and parents with children with special needs are challenged first by recognizing that they're different. And I believe it is also cultural. And I've spoken to quite a bit of parents, and that initially is almost traumatic for them to have to acknowledge that my child is different. And the facilitation or accommodation to the parent is not where it should be. And where that parent now is coping with their own emotions as being the parent of a child, what could I have done different, or what might I have done wrong? The system, the school system, probably dealing with early childhood is like, this is where you need to be at this time. And I'm saying that we need to be more mindful, we need to be more empathetic towards parents, children, to help them to come to a place where both teachers and parents can work together in the interest of that child. And someone would have just used the word ignorance, and is in the context of not knowing, but most parents feel ignorant when they're initially dealing with children with special needs, especially when you come to the stage where it is first detected by a teacher who might suggest that you need to get further analysis of the situation. So it's not like, I really miss this. And this is where we need to extend our hands and assist that parent in being able to understand what is necessary to help that child to realize his fullest potential within an education system. So there's heightened awareness of special needs, but there's not sufficient facilitation for parents and children within the system. And it goes right through our society, from the car parks to the business places. How many businesses per 100 or per 50 employees can say to you that we have any level of accommodation for
No.
persons with special needs?
Adults with disabilities are discriminated against as well as children. And I'm not surprised that the adults who have disabilities would be doing their work better and so on, because they have difficulty getting a job in the first place. And when they do get a job, they try extremely hard to keep it. And the saying that you can take a cow to the pond where you can make a drink is only partially true. And if you put sufficient salt in the mash, it will make it drink. And I would like to make some of the adults who might be ignorant, drinking that, if we can do some role play with them, persons who might be, have them blindfolded or both legs tied together or something, to show them how they would feel. Those persons who are breaking the law. And I say that in the absence of the law, we would hope that there would be law very soon. But in the absence, if we can do something else to demonstrate to those persons who are not kind to persons with disabilities how they should be behaving. And Article 24 of the United Nations Convention speaks specifically to children, with disabilities and education and so on. And it outlines that there is a difference between integration and inclusion. And we need to be going away from integration, which is, accommodating, persons who have difficulties, to making specific changes to include them from the very, very beginning. So we as individuals, we as a society, we need to do more, we need to educate more often. And persons with disabilities themselves, I always say that they can be the best advocates. And we need to get them more, for want of a better word, militant, especially with respect to voting and so on. They form a block, and if they can let the politicians know and for that be okay, this is what we feel, this is how we intend to behave and so on. And advocate more for their rights in terms of protest, in terms of voting, etc.
I'm glad that you mentioned Article 24 because I was doing some research and it was written by Beckel in 2014, and he mentioned the same article, the UN Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. And with this in mind, he opines, and we all of that opinion, if the purpose of inclusion, it seems clear in theory, but there are many problems in practice. Common practices, as we know, they marginalize and they segment, you know, the educational practices as well. And there are attitudinal barriers, as my colleague Gloria mentioned, and the main attitudinal barrier, it comes from family and it comes from society. So there's a duty to provide reasonable accommodation, right, for these persons and adapting measures as well, in order to allow children with disabilities to participate in the general classroom. So therefore the environment and the content as well has to be adapted to allow for this obligation. So I want to hear some feedback from persons in administration as well as personnel from the ministry, you know, how would we be willing to adapt this and adopt this in the ministry classroom to make it a reality. This article has been signed in 2006, and we know we've had incidents of inclusion and disabilities from the years gone by. So what is being done?
But that's what I do. Let me say that I used to be the acting director of the National Disability Unit, but I'm not speaking on behalf of government or the National Disability Unit, in that I am retired as of January this year. Happy retired. The National Disability Unit, they have a program where there's a resource person that goes to persons' homes and community, helping them to adjust to their blindness. And there was this story from the officer who said that a family members tend to be the major culprits. There was this mother who would not let the daughter cook when she's not there, wouldn't let her like to stay. So the assistant, she said, okay, let me see how you would like the stove. And the mother, she stroked the match and then put the match in the paper basket. The person who was blind lit the match and then put it in a cup with water. So he said, who is more likely to burn down the house now? And persons who are blind, they have certain skills and certain attitudes that help them to adjust to their blindness. But it is not so much the facilities, but also the attitudes of persons who are able.
If I could just briefly, I know Mr. Strong should and will speak as a retired administrator, although I don't think he's a retired. I want to welcome Ms. Christian and the parent, Teacher Christian, as parent of a child with special needs. I just want to offer for her purposes as well as some of us a brief summary of what we've put into the discussion thus far. And I heard a lot of words beginning with A, so I just kind of did a sort of across it, and I heard a lot of acknowledgement that we in this society, in this culture, need to acknowledge the realities of people with disabilities. It was Paul when Kwame said that things have changed now that people are accustomed to him, and it may sound strange, but I thought of what I call the pigtail phenomenon, where in Barbados, when we have something that is new, we are fascinated with it and it's everywhere, but as soon as we get accustomed to it, we no longer see it, and that is not always a positive thing. So we have to have a balance, and then acceptance of the strengths of people with disabilities, and of the improvements in the cultural landscape, as Mrs. Ashley has recognized, that there have been changes, but as well to the fact that we still have a ways to go, as Mr. Hill has purported or posed for us today, and as well as advocating and agitating for the change that is necessary for us to make a better society. As Senator Ito has said, we can't be a we and a them. We're all Barbadians together, and by extension, all part of the human landscape. So, Mr. Strong.
Yes, we're one strong retired principal in Barbados School, which I've been principal for 18 years. And I want to say that all the things we've touched on here this afternoon so far, we in Barbados, we have come a long way in terms of awareness. I remember the days in the late 80s, early 90s when we were fighting and flogging this whole issue of awareness. I want to say that we have come a long way in terms of persons being aware of persons with disabilities. But going back to the act, not the act, going back to the attitude. Up to now, we are still referring to persons as blind persons, deaf persons. We are referring to people with as disabled people. And you'll be surprised the impact of that. Because what we're doing, we're seeing the disability first. As Senator Kerry was speaking to, alluded to earlier. These persons are persons first. And that is why we need to get into the habit of speaking of PWD and SWD. In other words, persons with disability. See them as persons first. See the student as student first, and the disability after. You'll be surprised of what that will do. So first of all, we need to get our terms correct. We need to use them correctly, and then that would force us to recognize that they have rights. And a lot of these rights, for example, I shuddered when Kwame spoke of the fact that he is now, I'm probably paraphrasing, I'm trying to analyze what he said. In other words, he let it, at first where it was when there was new awareness of him. But you know what has happened? They've gotten used to a person who's blind there, and now they're stumbling over his stick and all that. You know who's to blame? We are to blame for that. Because someone should be observing the changes or the lack of changes and speaking to the authorities there in terms of alerting persons that when you see a person using that cane and that cane is just moving, coming down, you are to move out of the way. That's a right. And for too long in Barbados, the powers that be have been saying, look, we need to go the road of persuasion. If we do not move to legislation, I think the frustration, the subtle frustration that I'm hearing will always be with us. We need in Barbados to move to legislating. We need to do something with people who continue to park in spaces as Kathy was talking about. We need to, look, in the States, we go down Church Avenue, you see what happens when the bus is on Church Avenue in the States? The bus stops and it goes down and the bus driver gets out and he goes the other side and not a fella in the bus is saying a word. The folks there have come to realize that the person that is about to set onto that bus has a right to be on the bus like everybody else. Let that happen in Barbados at 7 o'clock. What are you doing? You should be home. People trying to get to work. What happened to you? We have not gotten around to recognize that these persons are persons first. And therefore they have a right to get on the bus. What is good though is that we are doing something about getting the students with disabilities early into our education system, and that's commendable. Because what will happen is that our able-bodied students will begin to hopefully appreciate that these persons, that they are persons, but they have some challenges, and as Kwame said initially, they would invite people to get out of the way and they would tell them all of that. But what we need to do is to also put support systems in the way and monitoring systems to ensure that right is being done for by these persons.
Go ahead, Maria.
I'm Maria, I'm a teacher, and I just want to interject here, well, in agreement with what Mr. Strong is talking about in legislation, but I believe that what we really need to start with is teacher education, because the teachers are the ones who are going to be dealing with these children in the classroom, and therefore they are going to grow up and then make the decisions and the choices that they're going to make. But the teachers are the ones that are going to be faced with them first, and I'm talking about early childhood. Now, I'll ask you 3 questions, and I just want you to say yes or no. Are persons with disabilities human beings?
Yes.
Are they entitled to human rights?
Yes.
Is education a human right?
Yes.
If I go to school and I ask these same questions, you think I'm going to get the same response from my teacher? Yes, I'm going to get it. Because as Mr. Strong said, everyone is aware. They're aware of it, but then what are we doing about it? What are we doing? Because they're aware, but then it stops there. Are we taking the education further? And what I want to address is at a macro level. Okay, this action is focusing on pre-service and in-service teacher education and training, and not just training that they're getting now for 3 hours and just introducing them to what special needs is. I'm talking about pre-service training. I'm repeating it again, pre-service and in-service training. So before you enter the classroom, you need to understand how to include, how to be inclusive, how to provide equity, and we spoke about this yesterday, in terms of early childhood, and how to be child-friendly. And a lot of us, like my colleague said, Gloria said, are ignorant. It is a fact. It is still ongoing. Yes, you, Ms. Lashley said that we have made improvements. Yes, but there are still in little pockets, because there are a lot of teachers out there that are still not aware. And I believe that if we train them before they enter the classrooms, and let me give you an example. If you put a scalpel in my hand, I'm not a doctor, and someone has a heart problem, you tell me to go and fix that. What am I going to do with that person? I'm going to kill that person. It's like, my husband's an air traffic controller, and if you think that they could tell him going to the tower or going to the radar room and maintain separation with these airplanes before they train him, what's going to happen? So are we doing the same thing when we take teachers? No, I entered the service back in 2000, January 2000, and I was just placed in the classroom. That's when my eyes open. I was like, this is it. Just put me in there just like that. And this is 2015, and I know that steps are being made to make changes. But then in terms of in-service, there are a lot of workshops, there are a lot of professional development programs that are offered, but you know what? They are optional. They're what? Optional. So if they're optional, our teachers, tell the truth. All of us here are humans. Do we like to work hard or make our lives easier? There are some that are going to go, yes, because they have the ethical responsibility to do so. But then there are others that say, well, I don't have to do it, so why should I? So in 2015, going 2016, don't you think that the change needs to be made where that we train our teachers before, and these are not my words, I took this from unicef.org. This is a document from 2013 identifying and promoting good practice in equity and child-friendly education. So we have to do more than just have a white paper that says that equal matters and no child left behind, but it's more than that. We have to do something about it. And I believe strongly that if we train the teachers first and not just train them first and leave them on ongoing training, that we will make a difference. I'd just like to end off with what it continues saying from an equity perspective. It is important in both in-service and pre-services processes to emphasize the teacher's obligation to have learning successful, and what you're going to do that's going to be based on their understanding and responding to individual differences. And my colleagues can attest that there are a lot of children in the classroom with special needs. They will not be visible, may not be visible by us, but they're there. So we need to, we must be able to assess the learning differences among their students and then personalize instruction to accommodate these differences. And I believe strongly, like I said, that this starts with education, not just optional education.
Sometimes